everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Caitlin and I live in Canada and make videos on all things travel, vlogs, working holiday, anything along those lines. If you have been with me for a while though, you will have seen that I recently went to Nicaragua on a very spontaneous, very last minute trip, and I cannot stop raving about this country. My experience there was just amazing. I fell in love with it so much. The culture was amazing. The landscape was just breathtaking. I love it so much that I'm planning on going back this winter, fingers crossed, and doing more of Central America. But my full vlog of that is up on my YouTube now, and you guys seem to really like it. So I've come on here today to answer some questions that I've been getting in my DMs about how much things cost. Now, I didn't go with a specific budget in mind, but I did go wanting to spend kind of as little money as possible. This trip wasn't something I planned or budgeted for in the first place, so I didn't have a lot of expendable funds at the time, so I've tracked everything I did spend to help other people see if this is a viable option for them, and to also help me plan in my return and going back to Central America so I can start saving for that. So I'm on here today. Let's go through a full cost breakdown. I'm going to tell you where I went, what I did, and how much it all cost. First things first, I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of where I went and how long I spent there to give you a little bit of context behind the figures I'm about to share. So first of all, I flew into Managua. This is about an hour from Granada. So I flew in, I got a taxi straight to Granada, and I spent a couple of nights there. I then got a shuttle to San Juan del Sur, spent some time there, went to Ometepe for a couple nights, and then finished off in Popoyo. I then flew out of Costa Rica. We flew out of Liberia back to Calgary because that's where the best flight deals were. So my trip was a total of 11 days. In my vlog, I had 9 days just of Nicaragua, but in this video, we're going to be talking about the full 11 days because I've got travel either side. First and foremost, my biggest category was food. So over 11 days, I spent $281, and that was on my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So that works out to be about $25 a day, which, if you ask me, is incredible. We went to the States and we spent thousands on food recently. So to go to Nicaragua and to only spend $25 a day on food is amazing. I only cooked a meal once, and that was when I got some groceries with some friends in a hostel, and we split all of that together. But the rest of it was just eating out, grabbing little things. The costs there were just so low, it made it so accessible. So next up is accommodation. So as a quick overview of where I stayed at Hostel Oasis in Granada, Surftown Hostel in San Juan del Sur, Casa Moreno in Ometepe, and Barrel Hostel in Popoyo. Now, these hostels were amazing and they were so cheap. So my total came to $145 for accommodation for those nights, which is incredible. So I had dorm rooms for the majority of them. We got a private room in Popoyo because there was 4 of us and it was just cheaper to split it that way. We had AC, which was amazing. But you cannot find accommodation that cheap in a lot of countries, and that's one thing I loved about Nicaragua. It's not breaking your bank just to have a bed to sleep in. Most places were kind of between like the 10 to 25 US dollars a night range, which is amazing in my opinion. My next biggest category was transport. Now this included taxis, shuttles, chicken buses, and scooter rental for a day. So my total came in at $144, and my biggest 2 expenses in that category was my taxi from the airport. So from Managua to Granada, I paid 50 USD. In hindsight, I think I could have bartered that down a little bit, but what's done is done. And then my scooter rental in Ometepe was a little bit expensive as well, but everything else for the most part was so cheap. Now to get around Nicaragua, they have what they call chicken buses. And I did a lot of research on these to start because I was fully imagining, those scenes in a film where people literally have chickens on cages and you're just packed in. But it is just more of like a general term, and it is their public bus system. Now I only used this once because I wasn't in Nicaragua for a very long time. I didn't want to spend too much time trying to figure out the system and transferring between buses. I just kind of wanted to get from point A to B as quick as possible. So for the most part, I did shuttles and taxis. When I was splitting taxis with a friend, they really were not too expensive at all. For example, I got a 2-hour taxi and I think it was about 25 USD for the total, which is just unheard of in a lot of places, right? So shuttles were amazing, taxis were amazing. The chicken bus I did get was fine. It was super cheap. It was like $3 or something like that, but it was so hot and small. They're just like old school buses that the country used to get people around in, which is great. But yeah, there are lots of different options as well, and I found that pricing to be not too bad. Next up, I have my cost for all my activities. Now, because I went there without a plan, I kind of just did activities that people highly recommended or that came provided by the hostel, so it was easy. But I spent a total of $94, which is incredible. So that includes a day trip out to the Laguna de Apoyo near Granada. It also included my guided trip to the Volcano Messiah. I also did Sunday Funday in San Juan del Sur, which I think was the most expensive one at 35 USD. Those four things combined though came to a total of $95, which was so cool. If I had more time there, I would have done more activities because they're guided tours. The locals know so much. They're amazing. Like the best way to see things as well and not have to worry about where you're going or what you need to see or must do or things like that. So for the 4 activities, that was my total. And then next up, I had like a visa or a tourist fee. It was something I paid at the airport when I first got there. It was just $10 USD. You had to have that in cash, I believe. But I paid that up front, and then I also sorted out my mobile phone at the airport. So I just got a travel SIM. It cost me $10 USD, and it covered me for my whole trip. So that is an overview of my category spend, and my total for the whole trip came in at $684 for 11 days. In my opinion, that is amazing, and I also think I could have done it a lot cheaper if I wanted to. There are certain things I could have cut back on food-wise, transport-wise for sure, but honestly, I loved my experience and I wouldn't change any of it just to save a few dollars. But that is an overview, so hopefully that is helpful. Now, not included in that is my flights. I was traveling through the States at the time I decided to go down to Nicaragua, so I had a very weird flight path, so I'm not sure how accurate this will be for anyone else's situation, but I flew from Seattle down to Managua. I had 2 stopovers and I transferred between airlines because I had a credit I needed to use. And then I flew out of Liberia into Calgary when I went home. So my total, I think, was about $700. I did use a $200 flight credit, which would have meant it would have been about $900 as well. For perspective, I did fly down to meet some of my friends from Banff, and they got flights and they booked in advance, and they just flew in and out of Calgary, so it was a little more standard, and I believe they paid around $700 each. So from Canada to Nicaragua, that's kind of a ballpark, I think, of where we're looking. But I only booked my trip a couple of days before I left, so who knows, it could be a little bit different. So in total, we're probably looking around the $1,400 mark, but for expenses while there, I was at $684. I hope that has given you guys a nice overview of how much it cost me to go to Central America and specifically Nicaragua. Now, I believe Nicaragua is one of the cheapest countries in Central America. I know when we went to Costa Rica next, the prices were just like comparable to the States. So very, very different, but that's what I loved about Nicaragua. It was just such an amazing place. I cannot stop raving about it. And while I was down there too, I met so many lovely people. I did not realize how big of a backpacking scene is down there. I think almost every single person I met was either traveling from Mexico down to Colombia or vice versa. I'd met friends that were traveling with friends. They met countries prior and they were still traveling together because they were just following kind of the same route and going together. So I think this is just an amazing place. I cannot wait to go back and experience more of Central America myself. For the most part too, I felt very safe. Now, I know there is a lot of kind of stigma around Central America and whether it is okay to go as a solo female traveler, but for me, I did not have any issues. I spoke very, very little Spanish as well, but for the most part, The locals were amazing, the other travelers were amazing, and it is definitely doable to get by. I'm hoping to learn more Spanish before I go back to Central America. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap up the video here. I hope this cost breakdown and budget video has been helpful for you guys. Let me know if you're going or have been and have any tips or tricks for people as well. I appreciate you all watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.